most important thing I should talk about and change in every patient's life is water. That's probably where I should start. People don't want to start there though. They want to start with their labs. They want me to read their hormone panels. They want me to look at their insulin. They want me to look at their glucose. They want me to track their, oh, can you look at this? Can you tell me what's happening with that? Instead of getting down to these fundamentals of, well, what's really going to fix all those bad little numbers? And let me explain those numbers to you. It comes down to water. The water you're drinking, the water you're cooking with, the water you're bathing. But most importantly, the water you make inside your cells. Hi friends, Dr. Rimka here, and I am driving back home, and I just, when I have like a 90-minute drive, I either listen to books, just think. I do a lot of scenarios. I'm one of those people that likes to play a lot of what if as I drive. And I have all kinds of scenarios that might happen, what might happen in my environment, how I'm going to respond. I play things out and rehearse them. I also play the game of what if I got $300,000? What if I had $1 million? What if I won $300 million? And I have it all detailed out. That's a fun game in case you guys look for things to do where you can let your mind be creative. But I've been thinking a lot in the last couple weeks. Something has come up that I've known about for a long time. And it's nagging at me again. It's back in my face, and apparently it's there because I have to deal with it. So what I said in the title was more on why drinking water might be killing you. So I did a live a few weeks ago about why telling you to drink more water is really bad advice. And that my patients who drink the most water are almost always, without a doubt, there might be one exception in 20 years, they are always the most dehydrated and have bad numbers. And it's so rampant, this just drink more water and tricks and tips to get your kids to drink more water. How can you do this? And I see all these water drinking challenges all over the place, and I'm not real sure, again. Tell me the research on the evidence of why you would think you have to drink that much water all the time. But I did a video, right? So go watch that. And I talked about the basic things everybody knows about. Let's talk about the thing most people don't know about. And I've been ignoring clinically a little bit because I didn't trust testing. And I thought the testing was expensive. I didn't really trust it. And when you're in practice and you actually see patients and you aren't just some ivory tower, douchebag that likes to tell people what to do and doesn't actually see any patients ever, hello, government, you don't like to just, you can't just change everything you do based upon some new exciting thing when what you've been doing is working, right? But we have to change. When something comes along better, you're like, well, I like this lab and I like this company and I like this way of approach, but wait, are you telling me there's this other way of hacking it that's even faster, that's even more affordable, that's safer, whatever it is. If it's safe and effective and then there's cost involved. As a clinician, I think about all those things for my patients, right? Compliance, I might have the greatest suggestion, but if it's $12,000 and I know they have 200, that my suggestion is worthless, right? So back to water. That's what it comes down to. I've been more and more in my courses. I feel like I can push people on the water. I explain the science of it. I go into the chemistry. I talk about its crystalline structure because I go all into the mitochondria. With patients, I can't go always that deep because it might take me a really long time. And I think I'm doing them a disservice at this point, because probably the most important thing I should talk about and change in every patient's life is water. That's probably where I should start. People don't want to start there though. They want to start with their labs. They want me to read their hormone panels. They want me to look at their insulin. They want me to look at their glucose. They want me to track their, oh, can you look at this? Can you tell me what's happening with that? instead of getting down to these fundamentals of, well, what's really going to fix all those bad little numbers, or let me explain those numbers to you. It comes down to water, the water you're drinking, the water you're cooking with, the water you're bathing, and most importantly, the water you make inside your cells. So here's the basic gist. I'll probably have to do a yellow board lesson on this probably 8 times. I do it inside my courses. So if you want any of that, take my classes at brainandbodyrevolution.org, because I go through all of this in detail with charts, and I draw things. But water is H2O, and y'all know that. What people don't seem to understand about water is the water inside your cells it's made by your cells. It's not coming from the water you drink, really. This is not how you get it. Yes, if you have a thirst signal, it's saying, wow, we can't keep up with what's the energy production of what's going on. I'm going to need a little bit exogenous water. And then you should listen to that signal, and you should drink the healthiest, cleanest, purest, structured water on earth, which would be, bubbling up from the ground at the top of a mountain near a northern latitude. And there's a reason I said all those things, but that would be your best water choice. So, because the number one way you make water is from your mitochondria. So your mitochondria, everybody says like the number one job of the mitochondria is to make ATP. Well, there's a whole slew of geeky biochemists that say, nope, that's not their job. That's not what mitochondria do. They do that as a byproduct of the other thing they do. And the number one thing they do is to make metabolic deuterium depleted water. So they make structured water, metabolic water, deuterium depleted water. What in the hell is that? Well, that's the magical water that you should be made of. That's what should be inside your cells. It's called metabolic water. It is made by your mitochondria. So all your cells, short of red blood cells, have a bunch of mitochondria in them, ranging, in at 500 to 3,500. The most mitochondria concentrations are in your brain and your heart, as a matter of fact, because they need to keep producing a lot of energy. Where does the energy come from? The energy comes from an electrical gradient. It comes from a negative and positive charge, you're a freaking battery. You need negative and positive charge to create a gradient to make electricity. You're basically a bunch of compartments of water, and your level of health is determined by the nature of that water. Is it a bunch of bulk water? It's literally called bulk water. Or is it easy water, exclusion zone water, or gel water, or structured water? I know, but this is what you're made of, and you don't know it. People don't know that the healthy water inside their cells is actually crystals. You are a crystal. It's crystalline structure. We know what it looks like. It has a 6-pointed system to it, the way it is. That special water, it's called exclusion zone. It's like Jell-O. Okay, it's called the 4th phase of water. And it keeps all minerals out of it. It keeps everything away from it. It's a pure negative charge. The water on the outside of it, inside that cell, has a positive charge, and it's got all the minerals and all the salts, electrolytes, and all the other garbage in it. So the nature of how much of that gel water you have, do you only have a couple cell thickness, or is it bigger and better? And what's the gel like? That's determining how healthy you are. So when you're drinking a bunch of water from the outside that actually can destroy that gel water, you're making yourself so much worse. So that's probably not the best way to explain this, but let's say it like this. Water, H2O. I said a word, deuterium. H is hydrogen. The O is oxygen. So you got 2 hydrogens and an oxygen. That makes up a molecule. Okay? 3 atoms, and you got a molecule. Hydrogen is the first element in the periodic table. It's got the atomic number of 1 because that's its weight. So you have a proton That's what it is. It's proton. So in a mitochondria, again, which is called the powerhouse of the cell, it's shuffling protons. This is what you do. All you're trying to do to stay alive and stay healthy is get hydrogen, basically from food. You want a bunch of hydrogens. You want as much hydrogen as you can get. And you want oxygen from air. You breathe it. And you combine your hydrogen and your oxygen inside the mitochondria, and they make your metabolic water. That's what happens. That's the actual biochemical process that we make like really complicated with memorizing like the Krebs cycle and for this molecule of glucose I get 30 ATP, and then for a ketone I get 36 ATP. It's horrible. We've all memorized these horrible the citric acid cycle, the Krebs cycle, all these things that go on in the mitochondria. There's like 4 big processes that go on in the mitochondria, but the thing people aren't talking about, they all talk about citric acid cycle, Krebs cycle, and ketones or glycolysis and all that. But they're not talking enough about the charge of taking hydrogen, a bunch of protons, and the whole thing, there's a motor, it's called a nanomotor. Literally, it's inside mitochondria. There's a bunch of nanomotors. You have a bunch of motors in you making this water. And they make it from dropping down hydrogens, protons. They drop it into like a slot. So picture, it literally is a revolving thing, you guys. It looks like a fan. Like if you have a fan the blades. Picture the blade, like your motor in your car. And like my car right now, I don't know, it's something, I'm not really a mechanic person, but I think it's like 3,000 revolutions per minute, 3,000 or 4,000 is what my engine can do. Well, the engine, the nanomotors, all of these motors that are in all of the mitochondria, they go 9,000 or 10,000 revolutions per minute. So it's like super fast. And it's dropping protons. Proton. Okay, and that's what it has to do. Throw hydrogen in, and it charges it, and then it grabs oxygen that's available, and then it makes this magical water. It also makes ATP. So you got your cell water, your metabolic water that's determining the structure, the crystalline structure of creating the charge in how you resonate, and you're making ATP. Awesome. Okay, great. And as soon as those nanomotors don't work, if they all stop working at the same time, you die. Nobody comes back. Once we kill a nanomotor in a mitochondria, you die. That's a known fact. If they all die at the same time, and there are poisons that do this, you're dead very quickly because no one's been able to figure out how to jumpstart those back. Now, what does that have to do with deuterium, and what the hell is she talking about? Hydrogen had a proton in the middle and then an electron on the outside. Deuterium is an isotope of hydrogen. So it's still hydrogen, but there's a proton in the middle and there's a neutron. As soon as you add that neutron, which is like kind of this neutral thing, that hydrogen doubles in weight. It's very unique that you have this atom that can instantly double in molecular weight in an isotope. Nobody else does that by adding one neutron. But because its molecular weight is 1, because of one proton, it does this weird thing. Hydrogen is a very magical atom, you guys. It does a lot of bizarre stuff. It's really important for us. So now you have a hydrogen isotope that's in water because it's deuterium. It just looks like D2O. Okay, it's instead of H2O, it's still water. So in your glasses of water that you're drinking, you have molecules of H2O and you have molecules of D2O. You have deuterium. Everybody, that's how it works everywhere. Okay, so it's not a toxin and poison. There's supposed to be deuterium in the water. However, we have way more deuterium in our water now than we did 10,000 years ago, because 11,000 years ago was the peak end of an ice age, and the planet has been naturally getting warmer post an ice age, and so the caps, the glacier caps, the polar caps are melting, and they've been melting for 11,000 years, right? So they've been melting more. So there's 30% more deuterium in the environment because the ice has been holding the deuterium. Because deuterium is twice as heavy as hydrogen, it has a different freezing point. It's warmer. So Anyway, it's trapped in the ice and it's been melting. So now the ocean has higher deuterium levels. The rivers, the lakes, the streams all have higher deuterium levels. Because of the temperature difference, the equator has way more deuterium than the poles do, right? The colder it is and the higher altitude, there's less deuterium. So that all being said, humans have more deuterium exposure than they did 10,000 years ago. It's 30% more. It's just in the environment. What does that have to do with anything? Okay, let's get back to this. And I swear I'm going to circle back, y'all, but this is where we're at. So we have these the motor, your little nano motors is what the mitochondria, which are making all your structured water and all your energy, all your ATP. Most of you all know the ATP story, and we're obsessed with it, but we're missing the point. By being obsessed with ATP and ketones, you're missing the water story. You're missing what is probably the most important thing your mitochondria do, which is to make all of your water. That's what they do, is make water. You make liters of water every day, actually. Okay? So, if you drop suddenly something in, it's like if you could be playing, that game where you drop the marbles in and you're playing with my kids, we build mazes and the things and this is like a game. If you drop all the marbles weigh exactly the same, but then I take a marble and I put it in and it's double the weight, the system can't handle it. The nanomotor, it's too heavy, and suddenly the rotation, they're all little proteins actually. So you got these proteins, it changes because it's double the weight, it changes the shape and structure of the protein, changes it down, and then the motor breaks down. Literally it clunk, 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 clunk. And the motor on the mitochondria breaks. So the more deuterium that is getting into your body and it's getting into your cells, the more nanomotors of more mitochondria get broken down by deuterium. So now you become dehydrated and you have low energy because you don't make enough structured water. Then you don't have concentration gradients and you can't make electrical potential charge. You don't make any ATP, you make less, and you're sick all the time. That's where we're at. So I have not tested my patients for deuterium levels. And I haven't tested myself. Partly because when I looked into it a few years ago, the tests were running like $350 and I thought, God, this is a lot of money to spend on something that we are straight up doing an experiment. I have no idea how valid these companies are. I have no idea how valid their solutions are. I'm not real sure I'm ready to ask my patients to start, because the solution, let's say we might spend $200-$300. Like, do I really want to ask somebody to spend $600-$700 on something that I just don't know, right? I'm like, I get it. I get deuterium is real. I know that I see all of it. I totally believe it. I get it. I mean, it's proven. There's, 150, published papers, if not more, on this explaining. And there's medical papers explaining how deuterium is related to disease pathology. This is done. The biochemists said this worked out. But I haven't done it as a clinician, and I have not found anybody else, none of my friends. I'm like, are you guys testing for deuterium? Are you testing for deuterium? I asked them, have you tested for deuterium? And then, no, I haven't done it yet. No, I just don't have time, or I don't know what to do if I believe, That's what we do. We gosh, So recently it's come back around again, and I've been saying for a few years, I've had companies ask me if you could have your magical pick of products, what would it be? And number one, I said deuterium depleted water. I said I would like a real high quality deuterium depleted water that was affordable and that I knew would work, right? We could test pre and post. So that's, other companies have been doing it. So now we have a lower price point. So I just saw, there's two companies that I know of that are doing testing, and it's like in the $200 range. I said, oh, well, that's already a little bit of a game changer. We got $200, $225. I'm like, that's way more doable than the $350, $3 something that was floating around a few years ago. I'm like, okay, we've made some improvements. And there's a little bit of improvement in the price point on the water that you can buy to do a protocol. So in general, to go through a deuterium depletion protocol is roughly 45 to 90 days. Now that's not bad, right? So this is just, I just want to throw this out, because as I've been trying to talk to some patients about this and changing gears, they're really resistant. Like, people are really resistant to address it, and I have to figure out how to explain it better. But at the end of the day, a person like Dr. Jack Cruz has been pretty right. You were saying, like, it's all comes health, and this is what I've been doing I changed the way I practice probably 5-6 years ago, maybe longer, I don't know, where I really just focus on light, water, and magnetism. And at the end of the day, well, if you're going to focus on light, water, magnetism, well, right there, it's water. I focus on it all the time, but I'm not pushing my patients strong enough on it. Water, deuterium is all about the water situation. And what people are drinking and they're doing, they're poisoning themselves with really high deuterium all the time. And they're making their mitochondria worse and worse and worse. And it's stunning to me that there's not a lot of talk about it. I mean, everybody I see on social media, it's like, 75 hard and gallon a day and blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's everywhere. And nobody even addresses the quality of the water. I mean, they're not even caring if there's neurotoxic fluoride, birth control pill residues, Xanax, other benzodiazepine, because that's all in your tap water. And chlorine, I mean, microplastics are all over. Microplastics are, why is that bad? I mean, it sounds disgusting, but it ruins your intestinal lining and you can't absorb anything. I mean, people have all these gut problems and you think, was your leaky gut caused by microplastics in your tap water? Probably, along with the glyphosate. So, drink Roundup and plastic and chlorine and fluoride, pumpkin, you ain't gonna be doing well. Nope, not at all. So I'm gonna start doing a little bit of talks about deuterium, and I'm gonna go ahead and get myself tested. I think some of it is like, I hate to see how bad it is, right? So that's a little bit of a ramble. Most of you don't. So like, what is deuterium? Again, isotope of hydrogen. It's normal. It's not a toxin. It's just in ocean water right now is 155 parts per million is deuterium. Okay, that's too high though, because 10,000 years ago was 30% less. Okay, at least. I know they know other numbers. And how they actually date things back in time, they're using deuterium to do it. It's really pretty interesting to go through. We call things carbon dating. It's not always carbon dating, it's actually deuterium dating. So very, very fascinating rabbit hole to go into. But so the water, roughly the ocean, 155 parts per million, and your drinking water could be much higher. You can actually test. So you can test yourself, and you can actually send in your water, you can send in food, you can send in supplements, and they will test the deuterium levels and everything. It's pretty, really, really fascinating. Like, I could drop $1,000 just on testing all kinds of things in my house, but I'm not going to do that. So that's where it gets tough, where I'm like, $200 to test my water, and $200 to test me, and $200 to test my kid, and so I get why it's a little bit like, I don't know if I want to go down the rabbit hole. But the body level you want your testing, you want it to be like under 120. And they find when people's deuterium gets to be 130 and higher, they're definitely starting to have some health issues, and probably their deuterium detoxification pathways aren't working. So if you're below 120, what they're like is, that's pretty good. It means your systems are working. Now, some people take themselves lower and they deplete themselves to like 90. They might do that if they're a peak performer or a competitive athlete. They'll use this hack to which means then their mitochondria are going to be like crazy efficient, and they're going to be making tons of metabolic water. They're going to be hydrating themselves insane, right? And then that means tons of ATP. But if it's your deuterium tests are, above 140, 150, they know you already have a metabolic disease. So if the water on the earth is already way too high in deuterium, and that's what people are drinking, and there's a number of other ways it gets higher, then, pretty much we're kind of screwed unless we're aware of it. And we work on getting it out of our system. The highest foods, so how can you at least avoid it a little bit? The highest foods would be grains. So you got to think of any food that's watered with deuterium-rich water, right? They're spraying the crops with this water that has even more heavy. It's called heavy water with deuterium because it's twice as strong, as heavy as hydrogen. Then the crops have even more deuterium, all the plants. So grains, naturally, wheat, grains, totally super high. Deuterium is embedded it's in the hydrogens and sugars. So in carbohydrates, there's more deuterium naturally. It's just always going to be that way because it's in it's in the sugars. Very high in fruit, high in a lot of plants and vegetables. It is the lowest in fat from grass-fed animals, from animals that are eating the proper diet, species-appropriate diet and seasonal diets. So this is where the grain-fed, grass-fed debates among like carnivores and ketos really comes to play. Everybody talks about, some people say, oh, there's no testing difference. Really, the only thing, omega-3, the omega-6. So we'd be like, wow, there's a little bit more B vitamins and a little bit more iron. Definitely a massive change in omega-6 and omega-3. But you know where there's a huge difference? Deuterium. Massive deuterium difference. So the least like food is fat that has deuterium. There's not that much deuterium. So to deplete your deuterium, you want to be on a high-fat type of diet, which is a natural diet, proper human diet, from natural sources. So from the animals that eat the food that they should be, grass. Okay? So you want to have grass-fed fats will help deplete your deuterium by not constantly ingesting. So if you eat a steak, which is the perfect protein, meat that has the perfect fat in it, it's naturally low deuterium. But I think the biggest way people are flooding themselves with deuterium, especially in the keto and carnivore community, is by drinking too much water, because they're drinking deuterium-laden water and they're loading themselves up. And I think for the people who are stuck sometimes in energy and weight loss and plateauing and still having pain and still having autoimmune reactions, everybody's super hyper-focused on the spices or the herbs or maybe this or maybe that, and instead of, well, why don't we just test your deuterium, pumpkin? And why don't we just actually approach going after depleting it? Because if you've been carnivore, let's say 1, 2, 3 years, and your deuterium is still rocking 140, that's a problem. So I'm going to be really curious to see what mine are, my levels are. I'm probably going to opt for, there's a lab that does just saliva, and there's a lab that does saliva and breath. And they actually look at the two and compare, and they say, actually, you need to do two to show that there's a difference between what's in your tissue and what's leaving the body. And I don't know enough. So I'm saying I have to learn a little bit more. It's why I haven't incorporated that much kind of testing and have them teach me how to do it. So I think I'm going to opt for the one that does the two things. Again, part of it is I don't recommend it because I'm still working out what lab do I trust, who do I trust, who's getting the results, and sometimes you just got to jump into the water, though. Pun intended, not really. I'm just got to kind of jump in and test things out. But there's a thing about why drinking water is still making you sick. And it's making you sicker in a way that many of you don't know. You don't even think about deuterium. And people say, oh, I drink spring water. I'm like, your spring water might be 160 parts per million deuterium. It might be 180 parts per million deuterium. You don't know unless you actually know, unless you test it. Right? I don't actually know. So I just avoid drinking water for the overall most part. I rarely drink it. I only drink when I'm thirsty. I don't think you should be drinking water. I think that is bad advice. I have thought it was bad advice for quite a long time. It's, well, why are people forcing their kids and setting alarms? I'm like, you're not helping. I don't know where this notion came that you have to drink a ton of water and your urine should be clear. I'm not sure why the urologists say that. I don't know where they're getting their data from, because if you study any primal tribal cultures who are wicked healthier than us, they don't drink water. They're not carrying around their camelback. They don't do it. You make it yourself, and there's hacks and ways and all the stuff, and sunlight helps dramatically and exercise helps dramatically. You make it, and people don't get in the sun, and they don't run and do things. They don't hunt. So we don't make as much water for a number of reasons.